She let out a piercing scream the second the handcuffs snapped shut. "You can't do this to me! I'm the president of this HOA. I have rights!" But my son, Officer Luke Harper, stood his ground, his badge glinting in the morning sun, as he gently but firmly held her arms behind her back. His face was a mask of calm, unreadable, like he'd handled 100 scenes just like this. Karen thrashed like a cornered animal, yelling for her husband, the neighbors, even the birds perched in the trees, but no one rushed to her rescue. They just stood frozen, jaws dropped, watching the chaos unfold. This wasn't the triumphant showdown she'd imagined when she called the cops on me for daring to move back to my own ranch. The look on her face when Luke flashed his badge and said, "Ma'am, you are under arrest for trespassing, harassment, and filing a false police report," was priceless. Her jaw hit the ground, her voice cracked, her knees buckled. But you're probably dying to know how we even got to this wild moment. Let me rewind to the start. My name is Linda Harper, a 60-year-old retired elementary school teacher, recently widowed, born and raised in the rolling countryside of Colorado. After my husband Tom passed, God rest his soul, I couldn't stomach the city life anymore. The noise, the empty apartment, the pitying glances from neighbors. I craved space, real space, so I packed up my belongings, loaded them into a rented moving truck, and which city in the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share with us if you've had any run-ins with your HOA. We'll narrate your story on our channel, Drove Back to Harper Hills. Now here's where things get tricky. Sometime during the years I was away, a homeowners association popped up. They renamed parts of the area Maple Stone. Estates fancy, right? But they didn't own my land. My ranch was clearly outside their jurisdiction. Still, some people didn't like seeing a ranch house ruin the view. Enter Karen. Oh, Karen Thompson was the self-appointed queen bee of Maple Stone. Estate's mid-50s, blonde bobcut obsessed with rules, and drove a white Lexus SUV like it was her royal carriage. She'd walk around the neighborhood with a clipboard like she was on patrol, eyeing everyone's yard like she was the lawn police the firstie. Time we met, I was unloading flower pots from my truck when she pulled up, rolled down her window halfway and said, "Excuse me, Mom, are you lost?" I smiled politely. "No, this is my land, I'm moving back in." She blinked. "This is part of Maplestone. You need to get approval from the HOA." I shook my head. My ranch is outside HOA limits. I checked the land. Survey records myself. You're welcome to look. She narrowed her eyes. We'll see about that. And that was just the beginning. Karen made it her mission to run me out every day, something new. First, she filed a noise complaint because I was using a chainsaw to trim down some overgrown trees. Then it was a health violation because I had chickens on a ranch. Can you believe that she even came up with a petition to preserve the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood, which was a fancy way of saying, make Linda leave, but I didn't budge. See, I was raised tougher than that. I grew up hauling hay and breaking horses before school. One woman with a clipboard and too much hairspray wasn't going to scare me. Still, things got worse. She stood at my fence one morning, yelling that my barn paint color was offensive. The barn was red, classic barn red. She claimed it clashed with the neighborhood palette. I laughed. That really got under her skin. A week later, I woke up to find someone had sprayed "Go Home" across my garage door in white paint. I knew who it was, but I had no proof. Instead of getting mad, I bought paint and covered. I'd up myself, humming old country songs as I worked. But I wasn't alone in this. My son Luke visited often. He'd grown up on this ranch
before joining the police academy. Now he's a deputy sheriff with the county. Tall, sharp, quiet. He didn't like what
Was happening every time he came over. He found something new. A broken fence post, overturned trash bins. Karen snooping around my property line pretending to walk her dog. Ma, he said one evening, "Do you want me to file something? You've got a right to live in peace." I shook my head. Not yet. I want to handle it kindly. But if she crosses the line again, and oh boy, she did. One morning I was watering my tomatoes when 3 police cruisers pulled into my driveway, sirens off, but lights flashing. 4 officers stepped out. One said, "We got a call about a squatter on this property." I blinked to squatter. "Yes, ma'am." Caller said, "An elderly woman is illegally occupying a property owned by the HOA." I laughed. I actually laughed. "You're joking." But they weren't. Karen stood at the end of the drive. Arms crossed, smug smile on her face like she just won a prize. "I have documents," she called out. "She doesn't live here." "She's trespassing." The officers turned back to me. "Ma'am, do you have proof?"
of ownership. I nodded and calmly walked inside, returned with the deed, original title, and even my ID. I was ready while they were checking the documents. Another SUV pulled up fast. Luke's. He must have heard the dispatch. He stepped out in full uniform.
Eyes locked on Karen. "What's going on here?" he asked. Voice calm, but with an edge. One of the officers answered, "Possible trespassing call." "Ma'am here says she owns the property. We're verifying now." Luke looked at me. I nodded slightly. Then he turned to Karen and said, "Ma'am, did you file this report?" Karen didn't recognize him in uniform. "Yes, I did. That woman has been squatting here for weeks. This property belongs to Maplestone Estates, and she refuses to leave." Luke walked slowly toward her, pulled out his badge and said, "Ma'am, my name is Officer Harper, County Sheriff's Department. You're under arrest for harassment, filing a false police report, and criminal trespassing." Karen blinked. "Wait, you're her son?" He nodded. "And you just made a huge mistake." That's when she screamed. But just when I thought the worst was behind us, one of Karen's friends stepped forward, clutching something in her hands. It was a folder inside it, something that made even Luke's face go
hard. "Oh no," he muttered. "What is it?" I asked. He showed me the folder. Inside was a forged complaint with my signature on it, only I never signed it. Who faked my signature? And what were they planning next? Where are you watching from? Let me know. Down
in the comments and buckle up, because this is just getting started. The forged document trembled in my hands. I stared at it, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a formal HOA complaint form, complete with my full name, address, and a shaky signature at the bottom that looked almost like mine, but I had never signed anything. Luke took it from me carefully and flipped through the rest of the folder. "It's not just one," he said, voice tight. "There's a whole stack here. Looks like they've been filing fake complaints, dozens of them all under your name." Karen stood there, still cuffed, her face pale now instead of red. Her friend, a thin woman with silver hair, named
Martha, looked just as stunned. "Martha," I said slowly. "Where did you get these?" she stammered. I just helped carry them. Karen said they were real. I didn't know she faked anything." Luke handed the folder to one of the other officers. This just became
evidence we're going to have to search the HOA office for more documents. And that's when Martha cracked. She keeps everything in the clubhouse basement. She whispered files, records, even surveillance from neighbors' houses. She said it was for security, but she made us sign things we didn't even read. Luke looked at her carefully. "You're willing to give a statement?" Martha nodded quickly, as if she'd just realized the ship she'd boarded was sinking fast, as Karen was loaded into the back of the cruiser. She screamed again. "This isn't over, Linda. You don't know who you're messing with. I built this community." I looked her dead in the eye. "No, Karen, you poisoned it." The cruiser drove off, leaving a circle of stunned neighbors and a trail of dust behind, but as the rumble of the engines faded, reality started to set in. It wasn't over, not even close. Later that day, I sat on the porch with Luke, sipping sweet tea and staring out over the golden fields of my ranch. The chickens clucked softly in the coop, and the late afternoon sun stretched long shadows over the grass, but the peace felt fragile. "Do you think she'll get off easy?" I asked. Luke shook his head. "Depends if we find more forgeries and intimidation tactics. This could be felony territory. But it's not just Karen. If others in the HOA knew and said nothing, he didn't need to finish." That's when the first anonymous letter arrived. I found it in my mailbox. The next morning, no return address, just a plain white envelope. With my name scribbled on the front inside was a single sheet of paper you should have left when you had the chance. "Stay quiet, or things will get messy." There was no signature, no fingerprints, just a message meant to scare me. I wasn't scared. I was furious, but I was also smart. I took the letter straight to Luke, who took photos and logged it as evidence. Then I double-checked all my doors and windows. I installed a new camera by the gate, and just to be safe, I adopted a new dog from the shelter, a sweet but massive German shepherd named Duke. The minute he set foot on the ranch, he acted like he'd been there forever, and it turned out I'd need him sooner than I thought. 2 nights later, around 1 a.m., Duke went nuts, barking loud and deep, pacing the porch like he sensed danger. I got up, heart racing, and peeked out the window. That's when I saw the shadows. 3 figures.
Moving near my barn, trying to stay low. I didn't wait. I called 911 and then called Luke directly. "They're back," I whispered. "There's 3 of them. I think they're trying to break into the barn." "Stay inside," he said. Immediately. "I'm coming. Don't go out."
There alone, but I couldn't just sit still. Grabbing my flashlight and Duke's leash, I stepped out the back and crept toward the barn through the side field. Duke was silent now, his muscles tense. We got close enough to see them, 2 men in dark hoodies.
And a woman with a clipboard, just like Karen's. That's when Duke let out the loudest growl I've ever heard. The intruders froze. One of them dropped what looked like a gas can. "Hey," I shouted. "This is private property. I'm calling the police." They scattered.
Like rats, one vaulted the fence, another tripped over a garden hose and fell flat. The woman darted into the trees behind the barn. Duke chased, but stayed close, barking so loud it echoed down the hills. Moments later, headlights tore up the drive.
Luke's cruiser sirens off, but lights on. He jumped out, gun holstered, and jogged toward me. Where'd they go? I pointed to the trees. They tried to torch the barn. He found the gas can still lying in the grass. By sunrise, 2 of the 3 intruders had
been caught. And guess what? One of them was Karen's nephew. The other was a contractor Karen had hired before to beautify the community park. The woman, still missing, but something told me she'd be back, especially because of what we found the next day. Tucked inside the barn, taped under the old saddle rack, was another note. "You think this is about a ranch? We don't want your land. We want what's under it, what was under it." That's when I remembered something Tom once told me years ago. Something
about an oil rights survey that had been done decades ago. We never thought much of it, never followed up. But maybe Karen did. Maybe that's why she was so desperate to get me off my own property. I turned to Luke, holding the note. "Son, I think this
just got bigger than both of us. You think this is about a ranch? We don't want your land. We want what's under it." I must have read the note 10 times. My fingers trembled, but not from fear, from the realization that everything made sense now. It wasn't about barn colors or chickens or my clashing house aesthetic. They were after something much bigger. Luke paced the barn, slowly inspecting every beam, every shadow. "You said Dad mentioned something about oil rights," he asked. I nodded slowly. Years.
I remember one of those land survey guys came through. He said there might be oil way beneath the property, but your father shrugged it off. Said we didn't need it. We were happy with our cattle in peace. Luke's eyes narrowed. Did he sign anything? Any paperwork transfer of rights? No, I said, at least not that I ever saw. But Karen's note means someone knows something, they've done their homework, and they want me gone so they can dig. Luke turned the gas can over again with a gloved hand. If
That's true. This isn't just about harassment anymore. This is organized, and whoever is behind it knows exactly what they're after. That's when we made the decision to investigate. We couldn't rely on Karen's HOA board or their records. Most of them were probably doctored. We needed the original land surveys, so Luke made some calls and set up a visit to the county archives. Meanwhile, I called in a favor from a longtime friend, Ronnie Jenkins, a retired oil prospector who used to live 2 towns over. He owed my late husband a favor. From way back in their rodeo days, Ronnie agreed to swing by the ranch and do a fresh read on the soil just to confirm, and sure enough, he brought big news. "There's definitely something here," he said, pointing to the reading on his seismic scanner. Not a huge pocket, but big enough to interest a private buyer, especially if the rest of the land around here has already been tapped. I just stood there staring at the hills I'd grown up on. The same hills Tom and I built our lives on all this time. We never knew. And somehow Karen did. While we waited for official land deed verifications, Luke asked me to be careful. "These people tried to burn your barn down," he said. "Next time, it could be worse," so I stayed. Inside most evenings, kept Duke close and made sure all the locks were changed, but I should have known they wouldn't stop. Not when oil money was on the line. It started small. One of my chickens went missing. Then my water line was mysteriously cut. Overnight, I fixed it. But the next morning, my generator was stolen from behind the shed. Luke tried filing it all, but we both knew this was someone playing a slow game of intimidation, and that's when the real bombshell dropped. The county archives finally sent the documents. Luke opened the envelope. Slowly, "You're not going to believe this." Inside was a copy of a mineral rights agreement signed by my husband, but the problem, the date. Tom passed away 3 years ago. I whispered, "This is dated." Last year, Luke's jaw clenched. "This is forged. Someone had forged my dead husband's signature to try and claim the rights to oil beneath my ranch. And not just that, the name on the transfer, Maplestone Holdings LLC. My stomach dropped. That's not even
a real company. Luke nodded grimly. Not yet, but it's registered under one of Karen's board members, Tyler Brandt. Tyler was the one with the fake smile, the one who always stood 2 steps behind Karen during HOA meetings, the one who once, accidentally, ran over my mailbox and never apologized. It was all clicking into place. They weren't just trying to kick me off my land, they were trying to steal it on paper. And if I hadn't stayed strong, if I had packed up and left when Karen first showed up, with her smug attitude and threats, they might have gotten away with it. Luke looked at me, fire in his eyes. "We got enough to go after them, but we need one more thing." "What's that?" I asked. "A confession." And so we set the trap. The next afternoon I invited Karen's old friend Martha for tea. She was already cooperating with Luke, but we needed her help with the final piece. "Martha," I asked gently, I know if Karen ever mentioned oil or selling land rights?" Martha looked nervous. She took a long sip of tea and then leaned in close. "She told me once, said if you moved back, she'd find a way to get you off that land, that it wasn't fair you were sitting on gold while the rest of us had nothing. Did she ever say anything about Tom, about forging anything?" Martha swallowed hard.
She said if you didn't leave willingly, she'd dig up ghosts if she had to. I didn't know what that meant until now. Luke, who was listening from inside with a wire recorder, had heard every word. It was enough to move forward. But the moment the police issued a warrant to search Tyler's office files at the HOA clubhouse, they found it, the original forged document, a fake notary stamp, even blueprints of my land marked with drill sites, and more names. Karen wasn't working. Alone, 4 other board members were involved, planning to split the profits once they forced me out and flipped the land to a private energy company. By the end of the day, the sheriff's department issued 3 more arrests, but just as I thought we were finally turning the tide, my phone rang late that night. It was Luke. "Ma, I need you to stay calm," he said. "What happened?" "There's been a break-in at the records office. Someone tried to burn the original land files." I sat straight up. "Was anything destroyed?" "Not yet. They were caught in the act, but it wasn't who we expected." "Who?" He hesitated. "It was Martha, the same woman who helped
Us, the same one who gave us everything. I couldn't breathe. Why would she do that? I don't know, Luke said. But she's not talking, and something tells me she was never just an innocent pawn in Karen's game. The first time I met Martha, she brought me
a pie lemon meringue slightly burnt on top, wrapped in plastic wrap, with a note that read, "Welcome home, hope you like it sweet." I had no idea then that the woman who baked that pie would one day be caught trying to burn down a building to cover up a criminal scheme. The phone call from Luke still echoed in my ears. "Martha, not Karen, not Tyler. Martha, she's not talking." Luke repeated as I sat silently on my living room couch, the dogs asleep by my feet and the moonlight painting the room in ghostly blue. She had full access to the HOA clubhouse. Luke continued. Security footage caught her entering at 3.A.
She bypassed the alarm with a key. She knew exactly what files to target. But why? I finally managed to whisper. "She asked for a lawyer, but Ma, we just found out something else." Luke sighed. "Martha owns 3% of Maplestone Holdings, LLC. I gripped the wire.
Edge of the couch. She was in on it at some point. Yes, but here's what doesn't make sense. Her name doesn't show up until recently. The documents were amended just last month. To include her, I sat back, trying to absorb it. Maybe she joined late. Maybe she got greedy. Maybe Karen promised her a cut if she stayed quiet and kept an eye on me. Or maybe Martha was scared. She told me she thought Karen was dangerous. I said quietly that she didn't read everything she signed. What if she got in too deep? And then tried to cover her tracks. Either way, Luke said she's involved and someone sent her to destroy the final link between your family and the oil rights. The news spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. The HOA, once feared and obeyed, like some suburban monarchy, was in shambles. Karen was still in holding. Pending charges, Tyler had lawyered up and refused to speak. The other board members were suddenly unavailable, and me, I just wanted peace. But peace was a long way off because
Even after all that, someone left another note. This one wasn't in the mailbox. It was taped to Duke's collar. "Back off, or the next one won't be a warning." My heart sank. Someone had gotten onto my property. Someone close enough to touch my dog. And
that's when I broke. No more waiting, no more kindness. I sat at the kitchen table that night, lit a candle, and pulled out every document, every note, every record we'd gathered. I called Luke and said, "We're going to court." But Luke had one more surprise for me. "You don't have to sue Ma. The DA's office is opening a case, criminal conspiracy, fraud, attempted arson, false reports. It's all being linked together."
And guess what? What they found, a bank account tied to the LLC offshore with over $700,000 already deposited. My breath caught. They were planning to drill within months, he said, but they needed full rights first, which means they needed me gone.
Luke nodded. Exactly that weekend, a temporary restraining order was placed against every board member of the HOA, Tyler, Karen, and the others were barred from coming within 100 FT of me or the property. But still, I didn't sleep easy, because people who want money that badly don't just go away. Then something unexpected happened. I got a call from a real estate developer, Miss Harper. The voice said, "I represent a group interested in purchasing your land. You'd be very well compensated. We're offering
1 million for the full estate, mineral rights included." I blinked. "That's a lot of money," I said carefully. "We believe it's a fair offer, considering the future value." I paused. "Who sent you?" I asked. The line went quiet, then click. They hung up. Luke ran.
The number burner phone dead end, but now we knew for sure. Someone else was in this, someone outside the HOA. Ronnie, my prospector friend, had warned me, where there's oil, there's vultures. You say no. Once they offer you more, you say no twice. They send the scary ones, and the scary ones were here. We needed leverage. So Luke and I made a plan. He reached out to one of his FBI contacts, told him everything, the forgeries, the bribes, the threats, the offshore accounts, and just like that, a task force was formed. The case officially moved from county to federal. That's when Karen cracked, faced with years in prison. She cut a deal. She named everyone involved, Tyler, Martha, even the outside developer who tried to bribe me. She admitted to forging Tom's signature, admitted to stalking illegal surveillance and falsifying dozens of HOA complaints. But she did something else too. She handed over a secret flash drive. Luke and I stared at it in silence when the feds brought it to our house. "What's on it?" I asked. The agent looked grim. "Everything," he said. "Emails, voice recordings, video files, plans to target other elderly landowners in the area with similar tactics. Your ranch was just the first." My stomach turned. It wasn't just about me. They had a network, a playbook, drive people off their land, forge papers, seize rights, flip to developers, rinse, repeat. They call it Project Clean Sweep. The agent said Karen wasn't just the HOA president, she was a recruiter. I sat in silence thinking of all the folks who lived out here, the retired veterans, the widows, the families who'd been here for generations. They were targeting the old, the alone, the quiet people like me. But they picked the wrong ranch this time because I wasn't alone. I had Luke, I had Duke, and now I had the truth, just as I began to feel the storm passing. The FBI made one more discovery, an encrypted email from the developer laptop, set to be sent 2 days from now. It read, "Phase 2 begins Sunday. Take the ranch. No matter what, no matter what." I stood, slowly staring at the agent. "You need to stay somewhere safe," he said. I looked out over my land, my barn, my garden, my porch, swing. "No," I said, "I'm not running the agent side. Then we'll post agents outside. You'll have protection around the clock." But even with protection, Sunday was coming and someone out there still wanted me gone. I barely slept. Saturday night, every creak in the wooden floors, every gust of wind against the windows, every rustle in the trees felt like a warning. Even Duke, normally calm and steady, paced the hallway all night, ears perked and growls deep in his chest. Sunday had arrived, and I could feel it in my bones. Something was coming. 2 unmarked FBI vehicles sat at the end of my driveway. Luke had pulled strings to make sure their best agents were on site, all disguised as ranch workers. One carried a shovel, the other a feed bucket, but their eyes never left the road. "Don't go anywhere alone today," Luke had said that morning, pacing the porch with a cup of black coffee. "They're getting desperate." That email wasn't a bluff. I nodded, my arms wrapped tightly around my chest. What if they don't come in cars this time? What if they're already hiding out there? Luke didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, he said, "We'll be ready." The FBI had set up motion detectors along the perimeter of my land trip wires, hidden under grass, a live drone feed circling above. Still by noon, nothing had happened, not a sound, not a shadow. Part of me thought maybe they'd backed off, but around 3:47 p.
I noticed something strange. My cell phone had no signal, not just bad signal, zero, no bars, no data, no Wi-Fi. I stepped outside. "Luke," I said, "my phone's dead." He checked his nothing. The agents did the same. Every device was jammed. That's when...
The drone feed cut out, we all froze. "Radio," one agent said. "Check the comms." The handheld buzzed, then screeched with static. Luke's eyes snapped toward the hills behind the barn. "They're jamming us!" The taller agent cursed. "They're coming. Get her inside, lock the doors." But I didn't make it to the door because that's when we heard the sound, a low rumble, faint at first, then louder like tires rolling fast over dirt. 3 black SUVs came flying over the hill, kicking up clouds of dust, moving fast, too fast. "Positions," one agent yelled. "Protect the perimeter." Luke grabbed my arm and pulled me behind the porch pillar. "Stay down," the SUVs screeched to a halt. Doors flew open. 6 men jumped out, all in dark, tactical clothes, no logos, no names. Their faces covered with masks. One of them raised something that looked like a bullhorn and shouted, "Linda Harper, come out now. You have 5 minutes to sign over the mineral rights, or we take what we want." My heart thundered. Duke barked furiously beside me. Luke's voice was calm but deadly. "They don't know we're not alone," he signaled with his fingers. Instantly, the FBI agents moved from behind haystacks, from the barn rafters, even from the silo. They'd been hiding everywhere. One shouted, "FBI, drop your weapons and surrender." But the masked men didn't surrender. Instead, they opened fire, I screamed, as bullets flew past the porch. Post splinters exploded from the railing. Duke lunged forward, barking madly before Luke pulled him back. Gunfire lit up the afternoon, but the
agents didn't back down. It was chaos. Dirt, flying, glass, shattering, shouting from every direction. The last thing I saw before I hit the floor was one of the masked men trying to run toward the barn with a backpack strapped to his chest. Something wasn't right. That wasn't a weapon. It was a detonator, Luke. I screamed the barn, but he was already moving. He sprinted across the field, dodging gunfire, tackling the man. Just feet before the barn's entrance, a massive thud echoed across the ranch.
As they hit the ground, the detonator flew out of the man's hand. One of the agents snatched it up and shouted, "It's live timers running." "Defuse it!" Luke yelled, pinning the suspect. Another agent fell in beside him and began frantically working on the device. I stood frozen, watching everything unfold like a nightmare. Within seconds, the ranch turned from battleground to arrest. Scene 3 of the masked men were down. 2 had run, only to be chased and caught by backup agents who had finally broken through the comms jam. The last one, the man with the detonator, was disarmed and cuffed. It was over, or so I thought. The FBI bomb technician finally disarmed the device it had been set to blow the barn to pieces, and inside the backpack, a contract typed with a forged signature of mine set to be discovered in the barn. Remains, they had a whole plan fake, my signature fake, my body being missing, and then claim I had signed away the mineral rights before disappearing. I sat on the porch steps, stunned, shaking, as the agent secured the last of the weapons. One of them walked up and said softly, "Ma'am, you're lucky if we
hadn't been ready."
But I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about why me, why here, why this ranch? And that's when Luke walked up, face dusty, clothes torn from the scuffle, and said, "Ma, it wasn't just oil." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He held up a black USB drive he pulled from the inside of the detonator pack, encrypted. "We're sending it to HQ," he said. "But the initial scan shows documents, maps, a list of property owners across 3 states, and every single one is an elderly widow living on land. With possible underground resources, I covered my mouth. It wasn't just my ranch, it was a system, a scheme. I was supposed to be the first name on their list and the first to disappear. I looked out across the horizon at my land, my father's old gate, the hill where Tom used to sit and sip his coffee. I was still standing, but now I had a choice to make. Do I keep the ranch? Do I sell it and walk away? Do I use this to fight for the others? Before I could speak, Luke knelt beside me. We're not done. Yet he said, not even close. Pete, because when the FBI opened the USB that night, they found one more document, a name one I hadn't heard before, the person funding it or the one behind the money, the threats, the LLCs, someone powerful and someone still free. Luke showed me the
file and I gasped. It was someone I knew. I stared at the name on the screen. It couldn't be. My hands went cold, my lips parted, but no words came out. I whispered, "No, that has to be a mistake."
But Luke didn't look away. It's real. Ma, we ran the name twice, the funding, the company set up, the jamming devices, even the masked men, they all trace back to him. The name glowing on the laptop screen was Daniel Wesmore, my late husband's best friend, our best man at the wedding. Godfather to my son Daniel, we'd shared Sunday dinners. He used to bring his wife over to help in the garden we'd cried together at. Tom's funeral. He held my hand while I said goodbye to the man I loved more than life, and all along he'd been plotting behind my back. I don't understand, I said, why he knew this land meant everything to us. He helped Tom build that barn he gave.
Luke, his first fishing rod, Luke's jaw was clenched tight. He also founded Wesmore Holdings, the real company behind Maplestone Estates. The LLC was just a front. He started it 6 months after Dad passed, just long enough for you to be vulnerable.
Sank back into the rocking chair on the porch, blinking through tears. All the moments came flooding back. Daniel telling me to consider downsizing, Daniel offering to take care of the paperwork. When I moved back, Daniel warning me these HOA types
are serious. Maybe it's not worth the stress. Linda, all of it was part of his plan. He never wanted to help me, I said bitterly. He was trying to get me to give up. Luke nodded. He's behind it all. Karen Tyler, the forgeries, even Martha's late involvement.
He bankrolled everything and stood back, watching it play out. My heart broke all over again. Daniel had stood beside my husband as he passed. He held my husband's hand in his final hours and then turned around and tried to erase everything we built. The FBI agent stepped out onto the porch. "Ma'am, we've got enough to issue a federal warrant, but Wesmore is already on the move." "What do you mean? He booked a flight out of Denver this morning, private jet, registered to a shell corporation. He's running." Luke stood up fast, then we go after him. "But how?" I asked, breath short. "If he's in the air?" The agent interrupted. "We've already notified the FAA. His plane won't land freely. But he's smart. He has people, money, he might slip through." That's when I stood
up. "No," I said firmly. "He won't, not this time." Luke looked at me with raised eyebrows. "I know where he's going," I said. "If he's running, it's not out of fear. It's out of desperation. He's going to try to erase the rest of the evidence." I remember him talking
about a property he kept up in the Rockies. Remote cabin, no cell towers, no neighbors. I think that's where he's headed. Luke made the call within minutes. The FBI rerouted a team toward the mountains. I wanted to go, but they wouldn't let me. Said it was too dangerous. So I waited anxiously, hour after hour. I sat in silence, the sun setting behind the hills, clutching a photo of Tom and Daniel from 1982, back when they were still boys with dreams, not men with secrets. Then finally, Luke called. "He's in custody," I exhaled. They caught him trying to burn the hard drives. He had a generator running a fire pit set up and a whole pile of evidence he was ready to destroy. But they got there in time. Did he say anything? Luke hesitated. He said it wasn't personal. I choked out a laugh. Not personal. He tried to ruin everything I had. I know, Ma, but it's over. Except it wasn't, because in Daniel's cabin, they found more than hard drives. They found maps, red line surveys of not just my ranch, but 9 other properties in nearby counties, all owned by elderly widows, all sitting on potentially valuable land. They weren't just coming for me, they were building a network, trying to seize lands one by one before the state could regulate the mineral rights. A quiet empire built on fear and paperwork. They were going to expand, Luke said, statewide, maybe across the region. If you hadn't stood your ground, I nodded slowly, it would have never stopped. The next week, the headlines hit every major outlet. Colorado. Widow foils multi-million-dollar land theft scheme. FBI uncovers HOA-based mineral fraud. Ring Ranch heroin brings down corrupt developer network. The calls flooded in. News stations, attorneys, even families of the other widows thanking me for holding the line. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt tired, but alive, whole safe that weekend. I stood out by the fence post where Tom used to sit. The sun rose gently over the fields. Duke sat by my feet, tail wagging. Birds sang softly in the distance. Luke joined me, hands in his pockets. You did it? I smiled. We did. We stood in silence for a long moment. Then Luke said, the DA's offering restitution. You could take the money and move somewhere easier. I looked out at my barn, my house, my garden. No, I said, this is my home. This land has already been paid for by my grandfather's sweat, my husband's hands, and now by truth. Luke smiled. I thought you'd say that. But just as we turned to head back inside, a pickup truck rolled slowly up the driveway. An unfamiliar man stepped out holding a briefcase. He looked nervous. Mrs. Harper, I nodded. I'm with the State Land Review.
Commission, we were contacted anonymously. We may have found something else beneath your land, not oil, something bigger. Luke stepped forward, eyes narrowing. What do you mean? The man handed over a geological report. Luke opened it and froze. Mob, I read over his shoulder and gasped. It wasn't just oil, it was lithium. Lithium, that one word was enough to send my heart racing all over again. The state official stood there awkwardly holding his briefcase like a shield. We were alerted by someone anonymously.
We ran tests from the same seismic scans your prospector submitted earlier. There are indicators, strong ones, of lithium deposits underneath your western ridge. Luke stared at the report, flipping through the pages. Are you absolutely sure? The man nodded slowly. As sure as we can be without drilling. But if the samples are accurate, this isn't just some rural mineral site, Mum. It's a strategic resource zone. My throat went dry. Strategic? He looked at me. Then at the horizon. Lithium is used in batteries, phones, electric cars, even military tech. Your land could be worth millions, maybe tens of millions. And if the US classifies this as a national interest site, Luke interrupted, it'll attract more than HOA thugs and greedy developers. The man didn't argue. I sank into the porch rocker, Duke pressing his weight against my legs, sensing my unease. Just as I'd found peace, just as I thought the war was over, it was about to start all over again, but this time it wouldn't be Karen with a clipboard. It would be men in suits, lawyers, government agents, companies waving million-dollar checks. The man left me with a card and a warning. Expect a formal survey crew. Next week I'd recommend getting a legal team. Luke leaned on the porch rail. Silent, what now? I finally asked. He rubbed his jaw. If this is real, you'll need more than just legal help. You'll need protection and planning. If it becomes federal land, they can try to seize it through eminent domain. I shook my head. This land isn't for sale, not now, not ever. Luke sat beside me, then we hold the line again, but this time we're smarter. The FBI helped expedite land protections based on the investigation. My ranch was temporarily shielded while forensic teams combed through the USB files from Daniel's stash. The extent of the fraud was larger than anyone imagined. Over 40 names, 18 fake LLCs, and more than $2 million in illegal transfers. But even with Karen and Daniel behind bars, more snakes were slithering from the grass. A week later, I got a visit, not from a developer, from a US government official in a pressed grey suit, polished shoes, and that stiff smile that never quite touches the eyes. "Mrs. Harper," he said calmly, "I'm here on behalf of the Department of Energy. We'd like to propose a partnership. You keep the land, we lease the rights." I didn't even blink no, he chuckled, like it was a joke. "We're talking about national progress, clean energy patriotism." I stood slowly, looking him dead in the eye. "You're talking about my land, my husband's land, my family's land." He pulled out a folder. "Please don't make this difficult." Before I could answer, Luke stepped out of the house in full deputy uniform. "You need to leave," he said coolly. "Now." The agent tried to hold his ground, but Luke's presence was enough. He left the folder behind and drove off, tires crunching. On gravel inside the folder was a contract, $28 million, but what they wanted in return, total access, total rights and silence. That night, I sat by Tom's old rocking chair on the back porch and stared out at the field where we used to watch the sunset.
All this trouble, all this pain because of something under my land, but they didn't understand it wasn't the oil, it wasn't the lithium, it was the memories, the history, the sweat, the prayers, the love this ranch held in its soil, and no amount of money
could buy that. I didn't sleep that night. I wrote letters, dozens of them, to the state, to the governor, to my neighbors, to other landowners who might be next. I told them the truth, the whole truth, not just what happened to me, but what nearly happened. To all of us, within days, a petition began, hundreds of signatures demanding the state recognize small ranches as heritage land, not for sale, not for lease, protected by law. The media caught wind. So did other widows, farmers, veterans, people who'd been quiet for too long. They started calling it the Ranchers' Rebellion. And me, I became its face. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. By the end of the month, Daniel was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. Karen got 7. Martha testified and entered witness protection. Wesmore Holdings was dissolved, the shell companies were seized, and the state they passed the Harper Land Protection Act, a bill preventing mineral seizures without unanimous consent from landowners within a designated community. I stood at the Capitol. The day had passed, holding a photo of Tom and smiling through tears as the cameras flashed. A reporter asked, "What are you going to do now, Mrs. Harper?" I smiled. "I'm going home, back to my porch, swing back to Duke, back to my chickens, back to my peace." And as I rocked in the golden light of another Colorado sunset, I finally let the wind carry away the weight of everything we had survived, because in the end they tried to take my home. But I didn't just fight back, I won. Where are you watching? From, if you've ever stood your ground for something that mattered, drop it in the comments, because this story proves even the quiet ones can roar.